today's knife review is a result of me getting some gift vouchers for my birthday recently. I've always been a fan of Victorinox Swiss Army knives, and I thought it was time to add some Wenger to the collection. So the one I've chosen is a large one-handed opening Swiss Army knife, something a bit different from my collection. There's a lot to like about this knife, but as you'll see, there are a couple of serious flaws as well. Okay, so here we have the Wenger RangerGrip 79. So it's one of the Ranger series, and the Ranger grip refers to the slightly grippy inserts in the handle. Before I got this knife, I knew there were a couple of things that there was one thing I would really like and one thing I don't like. The thing I don't like is the Wenger pattern can opener. I've always much preferred the Victorinox pattern, which I find a lot easier to use. The thing on this knife that I knew I would like is the release mechanism for the locking blade. It's a liner lock, and to release it, instead of pushing a tab there, you press the logo badge, which is a button, and that releases it. So I knew I was going to like that. I think that's a nice touch. So first thing we notice, it's a big knife. It's 130mm closed, 5 1/8 of an inch, and it weighs 163 grams, 5.7 ounces. We've got a 4-inch or thereabouts blade, 100mm, and just for comparison, we've got Mora Companion, and then the more usual Victorinox Spartan. So we can see it's a big knife. Now, when I was choosing this, I did particularly want to try a one-handed opener. And there's a few ways you can do the one-handed opening. You can have the spidey hole. You could have thumb studs or a thumb disc, but they'd get in the way of the other tools. You could have spring assist or full automatic opening, but that would limit the markets where you could sell the knife. So Wenger, as you can see, have gone with a spidey hole, but they've given it this very funky shape so that it doesn't look like a spidey hole. I think the blade looks really nice. The way they've done the outside edge of the hole, you've got a thumb ramp there with some jimping. The problem is, and this is a massive drawback for me on this knife, unless you've got tiny little hands, your thumb won't rest on the thumb ramp, on the jimping. Naturally your thumb will rest like that, where that corner digs right in. So if you're trying to do any carving, it's going to be really uncomfortable. I don't know if you can pick this up, there is a little bit of blade play up and down, nothing side to side, but I think that's just to do with the fact the blade's only 2.5mm thick, which means on the tang you can't really get much of an angle, which is what would lock up the slack on other liner locks with a thicker blade. And then this is another concern, shall we say. The blade is 100mm long, and I think it looks really nice with this swept plunge line. However, the cutting edge, So the plunge line goes to there, but the cutting edge only starts there. Now if the blade's 2.5mm thick, there's no reason why the cutting edge can't start 2.5mm away from the plunge line. That's more than enough to taper the thickness from the full stock thickness at the ricasso into the cutting edge. But here you've got 14mm, and as I say, it would be reasonable to have the first 2.5 as the taper in, but that still leaves you 11.5mm that's completely blunt, that should be cutting edge, and I think that is outrageous. If you combine the two things, the fact that the edge stops short and the fact that the thumb ramp has a big corner on that digs in your thumb, it's just inexcusable really. I mean, it makes you wonder, did anybody actually take a prototype of this home and test it for a week or two, and did they not notice that that is just really bad? So, gripes out of the way. We've got the usual bottle opener, large screwdriver, wire bender or wire stripper. As I mentioned, the Wenger pattern can opener, which I personally don't like, but it's not a deal breaker. Corkscrew on the back, and also on the back, this is described on the website as an awl, or rather the knife is described as having an awl and a reamer, and that's quite clearly an awl, nice and pointy with a eye, but it's not a reamer. Now whether that's just a mistake on the website or whether Wenger are trying to oversell it, I'm not sure, but on a reamer you have an edge for scraping out whatever you need to be scraped. So that's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. It might just be a mistake on the website. The big plus that this knife has is the really very substantial saw. Same teeth pattern as the Victorinox use, razor sharp, and a good chunky size. So, all in all, can I recommend this knife? I don't think it's ideal. We've got a massive design flaw with the spidey hole, really rubbish manufacturing with the blunt section of blade, and it does feel a little bit cheap. I'm not fond of the plastic they've used on the handles. I don't know if you can see on the camera that wraps round the side plates, so they're sort of recessed. But on the back, two of the spacers are made of a different metal than the tools. And I don't know if it's just the way it's finished, but it looks really cheap. Whereas the tools are polished stainless, these two spacers are a very pale grey matte finish. It makes them look like plastic. So overall, I would like to like this knife a lot, and I'm sure it's very useful, but it is flawed. We'll just do a quick cut to show that the section of blade that they've bothered to sharpen is nice and sharp, but that first centimetre is just completely blunt. So, all in all, for the price, and I think this was about £32, you do get a lot of knife for your money. And if you're after a large Swiss Army knife and that's your budget, I would definitely say consider it. But do bear in mind it's got a couple of fundamental problems. So we'll just show you the size comparison again, and then I'll do a couple of close-ups and you can make your own mind up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.